Hey there, YouTube. Welcome on back to Artichoke Dip. My name is Rob, solo tabletop gamer. And in this video, I'm going to get into some of the things I've recently acquired that I'm going to be putting into my library. And one thing I was kind of surprised about. So if this sounds interesting, hey, stick around and we're going to get into this. But first, got to get my disclaimer out of the way. And that is, if you liked the video, let me know. Click the like button. And if you just stumbled upon my channel and you're not subscribed, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, followed by the bell icon. When I do upload, you're going to get a notification. So it's no secret, I think, to a lot of people out there, I like the older style gaming. What I mean the older style gaming is the gaming I grew up with. Currently, we're into the 5th edition of D&D, and they're getting ready to move forward to another edition, which really don't care because I'm not into the full entire on electronic thing. So that's going to be an addition I will be completely oblivious to. But so something had happened. I was shopping around and looking for supplements and stuff for game systems I have that I enjoy. One of them I ran across, which is excellent, was for 2nd edition AD&D, still in the original factory packaging, and that was this one right here, Van Richten's Guide to Ghosts. Now, I haven't had a chance to really go through this other than thumb through it, and like I said, I just got these all in. I had ordered this, and another one I wanted to add to my collection for a long time. A little beat up, but not bad. All the maps are there. Everything that is needed is here. And that is Expedition to the Barrier Peaks. Yeah, it's a little worse for wear, but you know what? I have it now. And then there was a couple of them that, well, can't really find them. So I decided to go the print on demand path with them. And if you have watched my last video on building villages, you would have seen this, but it's one I've wanted for a long time, and one that's just always seemed to be out of my reach, and I have never been able to get until now, and that is the solo adventure for the original basic, or BX, however you want to look at it, Dungeons & Dragons, and that is the Maze of the Riddling Minotaur, which is this one right here, and I'm glad to have this. Last but not least, something else I wanted to add to my library, and I wanted to get into even further, and that was the Dungeons & Dragons, the campaign setting that they had called Hollow World, and I decided to pick this beast up, and it's quite meaty. So with my print on demand that I had ordered, which would be this one, the Hollow World, and of course this one right here, if I added on $5 more, I would have got the free shipping, and I decided to say, okay. So I went through the catalog and I looked around, and then that's when this one caught my eye, and I decided it's $5. If I like it, I like it, and if I don't, I don't. Maybe you can just pass it on to somebody who may enjoy it, and that is 5 Torches Deep. It's a pretty simplistic read to get through. There's not a whole lot here, and it's quite unique, I have to admit. And given the fact that I am, well, very familiar with all these editions, I could see where they were making bridges, and let's jump on into it. Let's get into this and kind of break things down and see what it has to offer. So what it explains to you, what this is think of it as a bridge. So people who have or only familiar with 5e, they've never played any other edition or any other tabletop RPG game. It's kind of sad, but I say that because there's so many different great RPG systems out there. And if they haven't experienced them, really they're limited, or limiting themselves, I should say, to a whole wide world of different worlds to explore, different game mechanics, and other things that, well, 5e is just not going to give them the opportunity to know. But this system right here said, hey, this is for people who are only familiar with 5e, and this is going to make a very simple bridge for them from 5e over to OSR. It explains a little bit what OSR is. And if you're not familiar with that, OSR stands for Old School Renaissance or Revival. Yeah, I get it. That's basically what old school gaming is referred to as these days. In my opinion, it's just a remarketing of old gaming in a new package. And you know what? My only complaint about it, and a friend of mine, we talked about this and even he agrees about it, is we've had this massive flux of core rules flood the market, but not many supplements for them. Maybe it would be nice to see more supplements out there in the market, more campaign ideas and rules, and go back to the old box set ideas, so people that do have these rule sets and still play and enjoy these games, it's going to give us more opportunities and more options than what we currently have. Just a thought, if you're watching this out there and you're a game developer or a publisher, you know, might be something you may want to consider. I bet it would do a lot more better than what you would probably think it would, considering people are hungry for new campaign settings. And yeah, like a lot of people, if you're trying to hit on nostalgia, go back to the old cardboard box sets. I bet you would sell more than you really think you would. But anyways, enough of that. Let's jump back into Five Torches Deep. So what is Five Torches Deep? Even the name Five Torches Deep, what it refers to is the amount of time that you get out of a torch and or lantern. And the game system is built around this concept. More than that, but hence the name Five Torches Deep. And it goes into the amount of time that you're going to be able to actually go and explore dungeons, how far you can go with them, and how many torches it's going to take to be able to reach the end of the scenario in approximately the amount of time. Hence the name Five Torches Deep. But it's more than that. And what this tries to do, like I said, is bridge a gap between OSR, or basic D&D, BX, however you want to refer to it, to 5e. Now, I have to admit, there are some concepts I see in here that I would do, me personally, a little bit different than the way that they did them, but I get the concept behind it and keeping it simple enough for people who have not played these older systems to understand and be able to start to dip their feet into the OSR. So the first thing it gets into is the basic characters. And as you see, just like the original BX, you have 4 different races you can choose from. Now, of course, if you understand in basic D&D, you didn't have races. You couldn't really choose races. You could choose classes. And with those classes, it was assumed that a magic user, a thief, and even a fighter were human. I'm sorry, I messed up. A magic user, a thief, a cleric, and a fighter were all human, leaving the other classes to be the elf, the dwarf, and the halfling, which were their own. You didn't really have a decision on which race your character was going to be. You just chose the class. Whereas if here, they give you an option to be able to choose which race you want to be. And that is, you could be a human, a dwarf, an elf, or a halfling. And then moving on from there, it goes into what you would expect to see from an RPG game, and that is your PC abilities. And it's going to give you your score modifiers. So, as you would expect to see, you're going to have your 6 main attributes being your strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdoms, and charisma. And of course, rolling your 4d6, dropping the lowest number, adding those up, and occupying your attribute modifiers. At that point, well, you would assign all of your modifiers to your ability scores. Now, where this is unique, and it goes back to the old school D&D, and it talks about experience. Unlike what we see in modern RPG games today, where experience is a reflection of encounters of monsters, traps, overall, if you want to look at it this way, the historical record of the adventures of your characters and a reflection of that in their experience level. This does it a different way. It doesn't go on how many monsters you encountered, but more or less it goes on how much wealth you have acquired. And depending on the amount of wealth will, at that point, determine your level. Now, this isn't a game system that you can really anticipate going into very high levels. As a matter of fact, you max out at 9th level, and there is nothing beyond not 9th level. That's just where it ends off. Some of you may be saying, well, what's the point? Well, it's old school. It really is old school, and that's how old school did that. And what I mean is, for many of you out there, if you have, or hold on one second. Let's tap into the old D&D stuff here and see what I'm talking about. If you are familiar with the old school D&D, then you would know the red box set would take you from level 1 through 3. Now, if you wanted to move beyond level 3 and you wanted to advance your character even further, then at that point you would go to this box set, which would pick up on level 3 and move through level 6. And then moving on from there, if you wanted to achieve a higher level than that, you would then at that point go to the master set here, and I believe actually the companion set was in between this one and that, if I remember correctly. It's been a while. It's been quite a while. Yes, it was the player's companion set, which will be this one right here. So to put them in order, you would at that point start out here on this set. You would then move to the companion set, then this set, and last but not least, you would come to this set. Now, this is all prior, before AD&D, and so that set would limit you to the level and what you could do with it. And it's just something we don't see in modern gaming anymore. Of course, most core rule books are going to cover your character's levels from level 1 all the way up to level 20 and beyond, and explain how to adjust your skills, feats, and so on and so forth to maintain game balance. But in this is really, it's going back to old school. It's limiting the amount of levels that you can actually obtain. So then it goes into the classes. The classes that are available to you is the warrior class, no surprise, the thief class, the zealot being the cleric, the mage class, in your magic user. So those are the 4 classes you have to choose from. Then of course it's going to go into the next obvious thing, which is going to be your armor, your weapons, and your overall equipment, how to equip your characters. And it touches off on load and encumbrance, and how they break it down. The thing I really do like about this game, and it's the way even in my solo games, how I simplify encumbrance in mine, is by reflecting the strength score rather than itemizing every single little thing and adding this up and coming to this number to round it off. And it just makes it simpler. It really does. So I like how they do supply and the load. So they sum it up as this, that each PC has supply up to their intelligence score. This is how much resupply the PC brought, and represents their ability to plan ahead with what they might need to bring. So supply meaning healing potions, ingredients for your spells, so on and so forth. The things that you're going to require on your adventure, that's going to be assumed that you're going to have to replenish at one point to move on. Now, one thing that they don't fully explain, and it's never explained in here, is you can use gold to resupply and purchase these things, but who do you get them from? I guess if you're playing in a group, the GM can figure that out. If you're playing solitaire, well, I guess you got to figure something out, right? And then it goes into supply and load. So 5 supply is equal to 1 load. 1 load meaning one object that's roughly about 5 pounds worth of weight. They could fit into a backpack or something like that. And you can't have any more load than your ability score of your strength score. I like that. The simplicity of that keeps it simple to where it's, especially for solitaire, that's just, for me, I like that. I really do. And of course, they go into an example to show you the difference between supply and gear and what they're talking about. And he touches off a little bit on foraging, what foraging is, durability and sundering. And what this goes into is a reflection of your gear, meaning you, instead of like what we've seen to D&D, and it's, I have to admit, one thing about D&D that they have done with their armors, where other game systems really focus on this, one of them I'm going to mention right off the top of my head is going to be Palladium Fantasy. They do an awesome job with this, with SDC, or structure. Now I got to remember, it's been so long since I've done it. SDC. Oh, I would have to look that up because it's eluding me at this time. But basically, what SDC is it's a reflection of how much damage that your armor can sustain before it begins to break down. We also see this in RuneQuest too. RuneQuest does the same thing. So now your armor takes on something completely different, rather than just being this thing that's recorded on your character sheet and just gives you a bonus to your AC that's just static and it never changes until you replace that armor and put something different on. This game system does the same thing. It reflects, hey, how much damage does this armor take? How much can it withstand before it eventually breaks down? And now you're at the point where it's not offering much protection, and you have to get it either replaced and or repaired. Structural damage capacity. There we go. I knew it would come back to me. It's been a while since I played Palladium Fantasy. I knew it would come back to me. SDC, structural damage capacity. It's a cool concept for gaming. And like I said, it poses this existential threat to your character, and it actually makes you think differently about the armor and combat in general. Now combat just does not become this regular way of, I'm going to say, life for your character, that it's just one combat scenario after another. Now you have to give much more thought into that. Now combat becomes far more dangerous and far more riskier for your characters. So when you move on to the book, the next thing we get into is the gameplay. It begins explaining the concept of saves and checks and how it takes skills from 5e and now changes them into proficiencies like we would see in 2nd edition AD&D, and how them proficiencies at that point affect your attribute modifier to be able to give you a bonus to the roll. It goes into active actions, movement actions, and quick actions, initiative, positioning, tactical superiority, PC attacks, ranged attacks, dealing damage, NPC attacks, and critical hits, critical failure, death and injury, healing and HP. And healing and HP is one of them I'm going to talk about because I do like how they did this. So one thing we see in 5e currently, and one of the reasons why a lot of people refer to it as the superhero game system, is for the fact that the characters are so grossly overpowered that it's almost like you have no consequences to your actions in game, and as you go along, it's going to be very hard for your character to die. Whereas in this system, it's completely different. Unlike 5e, where you're going to get your short rest, your long rest, and you're going to recover these HPs as you go along, this is reflected a little bit differently. As a matter of fact, you only heal HP equal to your HD. HD, if you've only played 5e, it's going to be a relatively weird concept to you, which represents hit die. And in the older editions of D&D, HD represented a lot. It represented the overall challenge level of the encounter and or character, but it was also a reflection of not only levels, but the strength of the overall character, how many hit points it had. So it's very interesting. Now you have taken that overpowered realm of safety out of the game, and now you have replaced it with uncertainty, and you have to make decisions that could either make or break your character. I like that. That's the thing I do like about old school gaming. Now, healing from rest, and let me just read the description as they have it in here. It says a PC heals 1 HP per level per night of safe rest. This excludes rest in a dungeon or in hostile wilderness. A PC heals 1 HP per night of unsafe rest, such as when in the dungeon, a level 4 PC would heal 4 HP in a night of safe rest or 1 HP in the dungeon. So you see what I mean? You could have 5 HD, but if you're not in a safe environment to get rest, you're only going to heal 1 HP. That can spell doom for the party and for your character. I love it. I love how they did that. Okay, it goes into healing from magic and medicines and the whole concept and idea behind it. And I think for the vast majority of us watching this, you understand that the difference between a healing potion, whether you're using a healing herb that your character may have foraged in the forest and identified, or what have it, external healing source beyond just normal rest for your character or natural healing for your character. So one thing that they do have in here that I do like, this is one thing you don't see in modern RPG games anymore, that's just kind of taken the wayside, and that's morale. Morale, especially for solitaire play, is a very cool thing. It adds a level of uncertainty into it, because after a couple of the encounters fall in combat, you can roll morale to see how they react. Are they going to flee? Are they going to stay and fight? What are they going to do? Now, the way that they resolve morale here is very simple. It's the wisdom modifier, proficient bonus. If the proficiency bonus fits the morale check, and then a monster morale bonus based off its HD. And then at that point, you would roll a 1d20, adding those up, and seeing if it meets and or exceeds the morale number. Now, of course, it explains, hey, when should you check morale? When the battle begins, after the first combatant is killed, when the leader of an expert is killed, or when the tide of the battle is obvious. So it touches off on side group or individual traps, treasure, travel turns. And travel turns is something unique, how it goes a little bit more into depth about overland travel, over water travel, and even a unique concept that you don't even see in a lot of RPG games, but they thought of this and they put it in there, and it's rolling to return, meaning the adventure or this leg of the part of the adventure is done. Now the characters are returning to the camp, village, or wherever they're returning to their safe haven to basically get their loot appraised, get their gold out of it, maybe write a new spell into their spell book and advance their levels, so on and so forth, all those things that we would see. And they have thought of this and put this in there. And it says, if there's insufficient time to roleplay the party's return to a safe camp scene by scene, the GM can have each player roll to return. This roll is a check with each PC rolling with a mod equal to their highest modifier, including proficiency. The GM decides if the path to safety is dangerous or arduous. And of course, it gives you the formula to be able to do this, which is DC 10 plus 1 per travel turn, a maximum of 20. And it's a unique concept. It's a very cool idea because it really does take some of the unknown out of that, and it adds some, I'm going to say, closure to some of them questions that are left unanswered. Even if you're playing solitaire or you're playing in a group, like my characters, when they were adventuring to this part, ran into all these obstacles and these dangers, but when they returned, what happened? What did they run into? And I like that. I really do. Timekeeping. Timekeeping is very unique. And how they explain to do this is on a D6, but it would just be far more simple for me to read the example they have in the book. And I think it'll sum it up for you to understand way better. So it says the party emerges from a portal. The GM rolls 2d6 to determine the current time of day on this plane. He rolls a 3 and a 2. It is the 5th hour, or 5 a.m. in the pre-dawn quarter. The GM sets one time die out to 5. As the party adventures, an hour passes. The GM rolls for a travel turn and rotates the time die to 6. As the party fights a few battles, the GM thinks another hour has passed and rolls for a travel turn. The GM brings out the second time die, another d6, and sets it to 1, or the 7th hour. So there's emphasis on tracking your time, hence getting back to the name, 5 torches deep, and everything keeping track of time, how the characters move through this. Not exactly keeping track of time in a combat round, but keeping time of the day and the travels as well. So this is where it really hits off on the light. and really where it comes together, hence the name Five Torches Deep. So it says there are 4 levels of light. Light affects different checks in different environments, both for PCs and NPCs. Torches last 1 hour. Lanterns last 3, and then they can cast 30 feet of dim light. So as you can see, hence the name Five Torches Deep is giving you an idea that the average game session you can expect to run about 5 hours. Not bad. Not bad at all. And it breaks up your light sources and your advantage and disadvantages in them. Yes, that's one thing that they did keep from 5e that they have put in here is we do have advantage and disadvantage, fumble and critical represented throughout the book. Now, it hits off on chases, retreat, resilience and exhaustion, corruptions referring to diseases, poisons, and venoms. And then, of course, it goes into your next section, magic. The magic is pretty simple. It explains spell casting to you. And the other cool thing I like in here that it really kind of reminds me more so of this, Mork Borg, is for the fact that you have to roll to see if your spell was successful or not and went off. Now, like Mork Borg, where we have a common DC number of 12 throughout the game, that being your baseline challenge rating, and then it can be adjusted from there. It's no different in Five Torches Deep, but their DC number is 11. So your baseline is 11, and anything going beyond that, it can be adjusted. So spellcasting checks, spells require a spell casting check with a DC of 10 plus the caster's level. And of course you have to meet and or exceed that number for your spell to go off and have its intended effect. If it doesn't, well, you have to deal with a magical mishap table. And there's all sorts of things that can happen to your character and or your party. One of them that I read in here that's just kind of captured my imagination, and I'm like, ooh, that would be horrible, is an orb of darkness surrounds the party. There's a lot you could do with that. Or caster emits blinding bright light to all. So it gives you some ideas of how you can take that magical mishap and the way that you can move it. Now, of course, they do have cantrips in here, and this is something that's not really old school. This is something that we've seen carried over from 5e to this, but so be it. Now, if you're not familiar with a cantrip is considered to be a spell that your spellcaster has so well memorized that he doesn't need ingredients or anything like that. He can just keep casting these spells because he's so proficient at it. And now the spellcasting's PC known and can cast 3 cantrips. So they have limited it to 3 cantrips per day. But it talks about other ways that spells can be cast as well. You can cast spells as rites, and if you cast a rite, a spellcaster can cast any known spell as a rite. This takes 1 hour per spell level of concentration, but does not require a check. So it's a way of getting around the spellcasting checks and being certain your spell will go off without any magical mishaps. Talks about concentration as well. If the concentration is broken at any time, well, then at that point, the spell has failed. And then, of course, new spells. PCs can improvise spells, but might be able to cast from a never-before-seen scroll or other magical artifact. Further, PCs can't research new spells. They must hunt for spell books and artifacts to discover spells. It's kind of cool how they broke this up. And as I have said in many other videos, you are not limited when you play D&D to use the spells in that specific edition. As a matter of fact, they're very compatible amongst the editions. and you can pull them out from other editions and put them into whatever edition you're playing. As a matter of fact, the tweaks that you have to make are very minimal, if any. So preparing spells, it explains how to prepare spells, components that may be needed, components meaning ingredients that may have to be added, or somatic meaning hand gestures for the spell, whatever they may need for the spell to go off properly. Potions, magic potions, and other consumables are highly encouraged and don't count towards the wielding magic item limit, which is your character modifier. Potions can apply a temporary spell effect, ability score increase, class or archetype feature, or other benefits as the GM sees fit. So it's kind of cool. I like the way that they've done the spell casting and the magic in here. The way how it's kind of broken things up. It's not too overpowered, but yet there are consequences to it, and there's always that margin of error that can occur for spell failure. I do like that. Now, spells known, not really much has changed. As a matter of fact, if you look at this, it looks like I'm looking at old school D&D. For the PC level, well, if you're a level 1, you only have access to one first level spell. And of course, you're going to have your 3 cantrips you can choose from, which are going to be not as powerful as your first level spell. So here it gets into converting spells, talking about spells, and it says cantrips should never directly deal damage. Non-damage cantrips from 5e and others can be used as is. Higher level 5e and OSR spells can be used as written per their spell level with max usable spell level 5. So yeah, here's the thing about 5 Torches Deep. So as I stated earlier, characters max out at level 9, but when it comes to spells, the highest spell level they can ever achieve is 5. So there is no spell level above 5, and this is it. At that point, your characters would be retired, and you would make a new character, and you would start over again. So it goes into converting magic items. Magic items from 5e and other editions can be used mostly as is. Some have save or usage requirements, which can convert to the appropriate check, create magic items by applying the benefit of a 5 Torches Deep spell monster maneuver or other written effects. So just another way that, like I said, the game is a bridge. You got to think of it that way. It's a bridge. Whether you're coming at this, you enjoy OSR, or you're 5e and you're looking to get into OSR, this is a pretty cool middle ground game, I have to admit. Looking at this, very soloable too. Item mods. Some editions apply a magic items level as a check modifier to certain actions, such as a +1 sword grants a +1 to hit in a melee. Magic items that are designed with accuracy or precision as their main benefit can provide such modifiers, but others don't. Scrolls and wands, it goes into that. Focuses. Magic focuses such as orbs or staffs act as magic weapons, potentially providing a check modifier. So it's pretty cool. It spends, you have more time, I think, elaborating on the magic system than you even do the combat section of this. And of course, it goes into your arcane spell list, your divine spell list, which they give you some examples here you can choose from. But as it says in there, you're not limited to just that. And this is good. This is good for me because one of my favorite books I love to pull from, this is from 3rd edition. It's not D&D. This was a different publisher at that time, which this was Swords and Sorcery Studios. But one of my favorite books, I got 2 copies of it, and I love it. And that is Relics and Rituals. This is an excellent book, a great source of some very unique spells that can be added into any D&D game. Whew, I think I need to take a sip of dew. We then get into the part of the book, NPCs and monsters. And this is really cool to see this, and going into retainers. So if you're an old school gamer, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And if you're not, let me explain to you. Retainers were how many NPCs you could hire that were under your control, or henchmen if you want to think about it that way. And a PC cannot command more than their charisma retainers. So it just like in the early versions of D&D, your charisma was a reflection, or your modifier, as to how many henchmen you could retain underneath your control, and your ability to have influence over them when you had to roll on the D20, particularly in a dangerous or questionable situation. This also is a very good tool for solo play, for the fact that if you wanted to solo in a group, but you want to only focus on one character and you don't want to run multiple, you can utilize this, especially if your character has a pretty high charisma attribute. Now at this point, you can solo play your one character. You have these other NPCs underneath your control, and you can control them. You can send that thief in to go and check out that door to make sure it's not trapped. If you hear something that sounds like it's shambling down the dark corridor towards you, you can send one or two of the fighters that you may have underneath your control to go and investigate and or kill. Last but not least, something to think about, you can have a cleric as an NPC that its sole reason to be there is for healing. So I love that. I love the fact that they have this in here. And if you've never played with retainers before, I strongly urge you can try it, particularly if you want to focus on one character. So, retainer checks. So retainers are built in a similar fashion to monsters, and it explains monsters. And so basically, like as I said, you're going to roll a 1d20, and you're going to do a difficulty check against that. 11 being your baseline, and of course, that number is going to be altered by the situation that you're in. So a PC commander can spend an active action on their turn to roll a command check, usually DC 11, but higher if the GM thinks that the tactical situation is especially troubling. Rather than attack or similar, the commander focuses on and maximizes the impact of their retainers. Success means that the ordered retainers gain advantage on their next roll, or able to execute a special maneuver as a single unit. So it goes more into depth into this and explains more. And of course, it touches off on renown. Renown meaning how well are you known throughout this fantasy world that you go in. And then reactions. Now, I think they could have done more with this reaction table. The reaction table actually does leave me wanting more. And what I mean by that is it breaks it up and it says if by rolling a 1d20, a result 1 through 5 is a hostile reaction, 6 through 10 is cautious, 11 through 15 is curious, and 16 through 20 is positive and or even friendly. It's simple, but I think they could have maybe added more into that, or even given us a table to go with it, rather than just a small heading, and that kind of gets lost within the pages. So now we go into the monster section, and the monsters are broken into categories based on their behavior and their role. A monster of any category can have any HD or hit dice. Special techniques can be added to any monster to make it more difficult or interesting. Each category has a description with actions and abilities that the monster is good or bad at. The monsters gain a check modifier to these actions per the below formulas. And it's going to break these formulas up into weak, normal, strong, and then it's going to go into its armor class and its dexterity rating. And of course, its HD reflects this. And they give you a table in there to be able to work out that math equation. So they do have a pretty decent, I'm going to say, area covering monsters, monster tactics, which I like. This is pretty cool because it says monsters should deploy tactics to the best of their ability. Even unintelligent beasts are able to coordinate as a pack. In general, all monsters prefer ambushes, ranged attacks, and focusing on one target. PCs should fear wide open battlefields, heavily emphasized monsters techniques. Most monsters and NPCs will organize into various types of units which deploy certain tactics to best leverage their strengths. And it's going to give you examples on how you should control these monsters, deploy them, and the reactions that they're going to take and the tactics. And it even goes into converting monsters. It goes into hordes, and most often project hordes, collections of treasure or loot, horde tables. So getting back to the heavy emphasis on your experiences reflected on the amount of treasure obtained, not the amount of encounters your characters have engaged with. I see a problem with that. More there in a minute. I'm going to get on that. So converting monsters, it says 5e monsters and NPCs can be run as written. However, 5e monsters tend to have more HP than advised. Consider half HP. Convert challenge rating to HD and use HD for monster math. The table that I had shown you. Games with ascending AC, and if you don't know what ascending AC is, and I've explained this before, so there's descending and ascending. Ascending is if you played any edition of D&D from 3rd edition all the way up in any of the D20 system, you're used to the ascending. The ascending being you have the AC number right in front of you. We'll say AC 14. You're going to roll your D20. You're going to add your bonuses and any other contributing factors to that hit number to meet and or exceed that number. Then we go into descending. Descending is just that. Instead of adding, now we're subtracting. We're going backwards with that. And they give a basic formula for this. And it says descending AC like BX can be converted by the formula 20 minus descending AC. A BX monster with a 6 AC becomes an AC 14. AC in 5 torches down, 5 torches deep, 5 torches deep, 20 negative 6 equals 14. Negative AC converts to 20 AC. So what they're explaining there is in the descending AC, if your number ever goes negative, at that point it's reflected as an AC 20. Bam. So if you have a negative 1, technically that'd be AC 21. A negative 2 would be an AC 22. One thing I understand the concept that they're getting here with the monsters, that I feel as if they're shortchanging themselves, or maybe perhaps they felt as if the concepts was just too much taken away from the simplicity for newer players that have only played the newer editions going back to OSR, is the fact that with the older editions, you had the ability to alter the HD of the monsters. And this was significant for 2 reasons. One, because it would change the hit points and or the challenge level. And two, it would greatly alter the AC number. What do I mean by that? Well, taking this example right here that they gave us with the descending AC, going back to the AC 6, subtracting it from 20, and quickly coming to 14. But what if our monster that we were fighting had 3 HD? Well, if it had 3, I would be adding 3 to the 14, which would quickly bring it up to an AC 17, reflecting the monster's strength, if you understand what I'm saying. So they left that out, and it's one thing that me, personally, when I go to play this, I'm going to put back in there. And the reason why is you can take a wide variety of different encounters out there, and by adjusting the HD, you're now not limited to having a first level character just constantly fighting goblins or gnolls, well, not even gnolls, kobolds, just these low level encounters over and over again until you just become bored with them. Now you have a wider selection of encounters to choose from, and by altering the HD, you can put them in there, making your games more interesting, and at the same time posing new challenges to you, whether it's a solitaire, you're playing a solitaire, or you're a game master and you're going to challenge your players. Just one of the things that me personally, I see that I would do. So moving on from that little rant, we're going to go into, it explains monster alignment, and it really sums up the difference between evil creatures, neutral creatures, and good creatures. And they go at this by saying, natural creatures that your characters are running to the wild, right? These are going to be bears or wildcats, stuff like that. They're not evil creatures. They're neutral. They're neither good nor evil. They're just trying to survive. Whereas of true evil creatures are going to be your demons, your devils, your necromancers, and their ilk. The undead sentients or otherwise aberrations and their thralls. These are going to be the evil aligned creatures, which is pretty cool. It's sweet, simple, concise, to the point, and clears up the confusion. Great job on that. Okay, building monsters. Last but not least, this goes into an entire section that explains to you techniques that you can use to build your own monsters to be able to populate your world. Like I said, whether you're solitaire or you're game mastering. And then, of course, it gives you an entire section where they give you example monsters, that how they would use them. And it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. I see how they have it set up and how I could take the original AD&D monster manual down off the shelf. I could play a game with this and throw it out and just take as is out of the book and quickly convert it to this. Or I could pull down a 5e monster manual, throw it out on the table, and take what's there out of the book. Having the having the HP total, and then at that point, putting it out on the table. So last but not least, it gets into game mastering, preparation framework, principles, explaining the concept of keeping the game fair and balanced for the players to keep them engaged, how to utilize plot hooks and things like that to keep the players engaged and keep coming back, to keep the story moving forward. So basically, your characters don't get bored to shit, basically. Let's just put it in there. All right. And then a generator. This is pretty cool. This gets into GMs can use these inspiration tables in an adventure or landmark generator. And it says this creates a threat or entity that wishes to act upon another entity. If successful, fallout occurs. Example is a warlord wants to steal a deity which causes growth. Okay. So I think that's a horrible example, but anyways, it has a connection table of a thing, action, and or fallout. Basically a randomized table. And we love randomized tables here on the Artichoke Dip channel, don't we? And a descriptor table. So the descriptor is going to break it down to the nature. And then with the nature, it means, is it an aberrant? Is it an infernal creature? Is it a predatory creature? You get the point there. The action of what the creature is doing. Is it biting, stabbing? Is it chanting? Is it lifting something, burying something? The material as to which the creature and or the descriptor is made out of. So it could be polished stone, it could be rusted iron, it could be fluffy snow even. The emotion, just that, the emotion, or the sensory being, is it prismatic or void of light? Is it a rotten stench, or is it sensory, a shrieking sound, or what have you? And then it goes into random maps. The GMs can generate a dungeon, city block, or wilderness map by using a common puzzle cube, 6 colors, 9 squares per side. Scramble the cube and roll it like a d6. The top face of the cube is the result for the map. Each color square on the result face is a type of terrain, obstacle, or location. Each is commonly enclosed or has a distinct border. So it breaks down the color, and you can see right here, this is the cube they're talking about. Like, hey, just cut this out of your fucking book, tape it together, and roll it on the table. Okay, that's one way you can do it. Or you could just take a pencil and, like, say, hey, you know, the green is 1. The white is 2. Yellow's 3. The red's 4. The blue's 5. And last but not least, the 6 is... the orange is 6. It's the way I would do it. Anyways, that's just me, you know. And then last but not least, we get into the back of the book, which is the quick reference chart, which is how to make a PC, the core mechanic. It breaks up again, load, the difference between load and supply, weapons and armor. The difference between them, like what is light armor? Light armor is going to be an AC 12 plus your dexterity. Mod heavy armor is going to be an AC 15, and it's going to be the equivalent of a 5 load. And your shield is going to offer air armor class of +2. It's going to also reflect 1 load in your inventory and or your encumbrance. And well, it has a break for its HP and its endurance, basically. Gets into gear and supply, goes into combat. So your combat's going to give you your initiative, the rounds, what a turn is, your actions, the difference between a movement, an attack, hit points, your morale check, all of that. Gives you a quick, brief summary on your retainers, how you should use the retainers in the process to use the retainers and or the henchmen. Travel. So with travel, like, I'll hit this real quick. So if you're doing overland travel, it's going to be 10 plus your strength modifier. And that will equal miles per day that character can travel. Over water travel in a boat will be 3 miles per hour, and ships 5 miles per hour. Conditions alter this. Makes sense. Retreat, a full action round to make a check. Successful retreats from danger, but can't act. Failure means stuck in a bad position. Well, yeah, that happens. And then the course goes into light. It breaks it down for magic, and it also gives you the magic mishap table in the back. Goes into your monsters and your NPCs and your sundries. PCs roll per their class at creation. GMs can roll for random useful tools in a dungeon. So it's just going to give you extra little added goodies you can add to your characters during the creation to help them out. And last but not least, we come to the very simple, it's just a simple character sheet right there for you to photocopy and make your characters on. Not that you would need it, honestly. This game is so simple that I would say you could probably even use a index card for your character sheet, or, you know, just saying if you were looking for simplicity's sake. But I have to say my one issue with this whole game is the experience. And why do I say that? The fact that it goes off of the value of treasure and or gold you have versus the encounters. Well, what about this scenario? I'm a solitaire player. Let's say I got my tables in front of me and my characters enter into this dungeon. They come across the first room. At that point, I send my henchman in. He goes in and disables the trap, the door, and is able to unlock the door successfully. The characters and the henchmen go into the room. Now I roll on the random table, which is in this room. Well, it turns out to be a dragon's hoard. Okay, a dragon's hoard of treasure. Well, wouldn't it be pretty safe at that point to come to the conclusion quite quickly that with the amount of gold and or treasure, magical treasure, rare items, stuff like that, that my characters would quickly go from first level to 9th level like that? So that's the one thing I see about this game system that I kind of like go, I don't really agree with the treasure. But on the other hand, I can see the beauty behind it. And what do I mean by that? It doesn't necessarily mean that your characters have to adventure or move around in a very rich world, if you will, where gold can be extremely rare but precious, and even magical treasures even far rare. So it could slow down the level progression of the character, dragging it out, which could give you longer play sessions for them. But if you're playing in a group setting, is that a good or a bad thing? How long before the characters, or I should say players, I'm getting that confused because characters are characters, players are players. How long before the players become tired? They don't see a, how do I put this, a very quick, I'm going to say, advancement in their characters, where they feel as if, hey, we've been playing for the last 3-4 sessions, and if any other game system I would have played, I would be coming up on advancing a level or would have already advanced a level. Whereas if in this game, it could be another 6, 7, or possibly 10 gaming sessions down the road before I advance to the next level. So there's going to be a problem there to where it's going to be hard to keep the characters really retained and want them to keep them coming back to the table knowing this. So this is the one thing I do see about this game that is kind of the Achilles heel of it, for the fact that you have to walk a razor's edge and a very fine balance to be able to even out the treasure compared to the length of the game sessions to really be able to mediate the character advancement. But the fact that it does peak out at 9th level, you don't want to go too fast, because then the characters will be retired maybe quicker than you want them to as a solitaire player or in a group setting, but you don't want them too slow to where you're going to begin to lose interest. And you can see what I'm saying. That's where I see with this game, there is that, like I said, you feel as if you're walking a razor's edge right there. But nevertheless, I have to say, at the end of the day, you know, for the $5 that I paid for this to get my free shipping, and I'm pleasantly surprised by it. As a matter of fact, I'm looking forward to actually playing this, for the fact that it's not 5e. It's really not OSR. It kind of stands out on its own. It's a very simple system. It's, in my opinion, very soluble. Very soloable, for the fact that the rules are so streamlined and simple, and they keep it clean, concise, straight to the point. You're not having to go through page after page after page of these extremely elaborate descriptions of something that, you know, could have been summed up in one, at the most, if they had to, 2 paragraphs. They just keep it very simple and straight to the point, which is good. That means it's very user-friendly. The final editing to this book is great. I love how they keep everything to its section. There is nothing more freaking frustrating about a game system than one of those that you are constantly flipping from the front of the book to the back of the book to the middle of the book, back to the front of the book to the back of the book. You get the point to get the information you want, because whoever did the final editing didn't even think about this. They just said, here's a game, there you go. And then they wonder why aren't people really engaging in this? I don't know. Maybe it's because they can't find anything. As you could tell, when it comes to final editing with books, I'm a big stickler on that. I want to be able to go through and find the information I need to find in the section that it's in. I don't want to have to traverse a book front to back. Unless it's the first time I'm reading it, then hey, that is what it is. After that, I want to be able to go to the section and find the information I'm looking for. And they have done an excellent job on this. Now, you know, to be fair, this is a pretty small book. Comes in at 47 pages, but they pack a lot into it. And like I said, it's a very simplistic game. This will be a very cool solo game, and this will probably be one I may do some playthroughs on and record to put up there. But nevertheless, it's just one of those. When I got my shipment of books in, these, I looked at it and I'm like, okay, I knew what I was getting here, and I knew exactly what I was getting here because these are the ones I chose, I wanted. This was the unknown. And if you ask me, it was kind of the diamond in the rough, almost, because I'm pleasantly surprised and I'm happy with it. And I know for some of you out there watching, you may be like, well, wait a minute, you said, you know, the whole 5e thing. And you're right. Moving forward with the whole 5e thing, I just don't like... There's some things I like, but there's a whole lot of things I don't like. I don't like the overpowered characters, I should say. I like the way that they presented in here. I want uncertainty and danger in my games. I want consequences. I don't want to have a feeling of a safety net and or no consequences to where my characters can take a rest and just constantly regain hit points to go back out into the fight. Just as it explained in here, hey, if the characters are stranded in this dungeon and they're having to rest and try to recuperate in this dungeon, they're only going to gain 1 hit point. That's it. Regardless of what level they are, they need proper healing in a safe environment. I like that. I really do like that. It does add an extra level of uncertainty into your games. And if you ask me, that's what makes an RPG game so alluring. That's what makes us want to play them, because it's uncertain as to what can happen. Unlike going into it saying, well, it's no problem what we face, because I can take a short rest here, I can take my long rest here, and then I can take another short rest here, and I know I'm going to have this many HP, and therefore, to me, that that takes the uncertainty out of the RPG. That takes the amount of infinite possibilities, may they be good and or bad, for the gaming session out. Because what that does is it has put the safety net into place, in my opinion. Whereas with this, we don't see it, which is why I enjoy these older game systems. Not all of them old, some of them new, but for the majority of them, the older ones like this, Expedition to the Barrier Peaks, and even getting into my beloved Ravenloft. The good old-fashioned Ravenloft. So with that being said, my friends, these are my thoughts, not yours. And if you get a chance to check out 5 Torches Deep, whether you're currently I'm going to say a devout D20 player and you've only been playing 5e and you have never tried any OSR, or if you're an OSR, an old school player like me, how they refer to us, the grognogs or whatever. You know what I'm talking about. You're an old school player like me. You've been around RPGs for a while and you're looking for a simple system into which you can play solo that's kind of small and really encapsulates those older concepts and ideas of old school RPG gaming and melds them with a more modern D20 system into it to be able to give you a very simplistic RPG experience. And at the same time, you can take various different additions and source materials and throw them together, meld them together, and make them work. I would suggest you check out 5 Torches Deep. Now, with that being said, I would have to look more into this and see if they have gone any further with this, if they have put out any supplements or anything like that. Not that I would be looking to add those to the myriad of books behind me right now, because I really don't need them, but it would be interesting to see. So with that out there, my friends, let me know if you have 5 Torches Deep. If you play it, drop me a comment, tell me what you think on it, whether I'm right, wrong, indifferent, or whatever. I'd love to hear from you. And don't forget, hit the like button. If you like this kind of content, let me know. Because if you don't, well then I'm just going to go completely the direction I want to go. And hey, you may not like it, but who do you have to blame? Yourself, not me. See, pal? See how that works? And last but not least, I'm just going to reiterate it again. If you're new here, you just stumbled upon my channel, click the subscribe and the bell icon. It's not for me, it's for you. And the reason why it's for you is when I've done my part and I have uploaded the video to the YouTube server, it's at that point YouTube's going to send you a little notification on whichever device you're using and saying, hey, the ugly mug guy over here by the name of Artichoke Dip has just uploaded the video. If you're interested, you want to hear him blab about an RPG game for a while, well, here it is. So with that being said, my friends, this is Artichoke Dip signing off.